When you read the word wine in the Bible, what pops into your head? Probably a glass of Merlot, right? Something strong. But what if I told you that the wine they were drinking back then was something else entirely? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start by busting a huge misconception. Then we'll get into the reality of what ancient wine was really like and look at its alcohol content, which is pretty surprising. We'll also touch on what the Bible actually says about drunkenness and wrap it all up by seeing why this was just a completely different beverage. All right, first up, let's tackle that big misconception. So, when the Bible talks about wine, are we really talking about that 14% bottle of Cabernet you can buy at the store? The short answer? No way, not even close. Yeah, the word got translated as wine, but the drink they were actually consuming was a whole different story. Okay, so if it wasn't the wine we know, then what in the world was it? Let's jump back in time and take a look at how they actually made this stuff. The whole process was actually super simple, very natural. You press the grapes, let the juice ferment a bit in these cool clay pots, but here's the absolute key, the most important step. They always diluted it with water. And I don't mean sometimes, this was the standard everyday way it was done. And that one step, the dilution, just shows you how different these two drinks are. Ancient wine was this light, watered-down, refreshing drink for everyday life. Modern wine, it's all about controlled fermentation, making it super concentrated and potent. The whole point of the drink was just different. They're worlds apart. So this is the main takeaway right here. We're not actually talking about wine in our modern sense. It's really more like a lightly fermented grape beverage. And get this, the standard recipe was to mix it with about 3 parts water to every 1 part of the grape concentrate, sometimes even more water than that. Now, as you can imagine, adding all that water had a huge impact on the alcohol content. And wait till you see the actual numbers. This is where things get really interesting. We're talking about 2.8 to 3%. That's it. After mixing it with water, that was the typical strength. Just let that sink in for a second. That's way weaker than most modern beers, and it's a tiny fraction of the alcohol in a typical bottle of wine today. And this really drives the point home. Your average red wine today is easily 4 or 5 times stronger. But here's the real shocker. Have you ever looked at the back of a cough syrup bottle? Some of them have around 12% alcohol. That means a dose of cough medicine can literally be 4 times stronger than the wine Jesus and others were drinking. And it's funny because trace amounts of alcohol or ethanol are in all sorts of things we eat. A really ripe banana, it's got a little. A slice of bread made with yeast, yep. Congee, a fermented drink, has about 2.5%. And pure vanilla extract, that can be up to 35% alcohol. So the point is, this low alcohol level wasn't some weird special thing. It was totally normal, just like other foods they ate. So that brings up a really important question about the Bible's warnings against drunkenness. I mean, if the drink was so weak, what did it even mean to get drunk back then? Well, if you look at the texts, they're super consistent. From the Old Testament to the New, the warning is always against the act of getting drunk, losing control, making bad judgments. The issue wasn't drinking this mild, everyday beverage. The issue was the excess and the overindulgence that led to intoxication. And let's be real, you'd have to try really hard to get drunk on a 3% drink. You'd have to chug a ridiculous amount, way more than anyone would normally drink. So when you read those stories about drunkenness in the Bible, it changes how you see them. It wasn't about someone having one too many. It was about someone going way, way over the top on purpose. The problem was never the drink itself. It was the choice to get drunk. So you put all these pieces together, and the conclusion is just crystal clear. We're not even comparing apples to apples here, like a weak wine versus a strong wine. We're talking about 2 totally different kinds of drinks, period. Yeah, this really lays it all out. On one side, you've got this 2-3% drink that's basically for hydration and refreshment. On the other, a 12 to 15% potent drink for social occasions. You've got simple and natural versus controlled and concentrated. They might share the same translated name, wine, but that's about where the similarities end. So think about this. The next time you read about the wedding at Cana where Jesus turned water into wine, don't picture him conjuring up a case of modern Merlot. A much, much more accurate picture would be something like a light, refreshing grape juice spritzer. It was a drink for celebration and hydration, not for getting intoxicated. And that really leaves us with something to think about, right? Knowing that the wine of the Bible was basically this light, diluted grape drink, how does that change the way we read these ancient texts?
It really forces us to check our modern assumptions at the door and maybe, just maybe, see these stories in a whole new light.